Sam McPhee, and I am the Membership and Advertising Coordinator for the Milton Chamber of Commerce. I want to thank everyone here for joining the Milton Chamber this morning for our COVID Conversations series. This is a series that allows our members to share their expertise and their knowledge with the community during these challenging times. It is my pleasure to introduce Zoe, our expert speaker. Zoe Mitchell is the Senior Management Consultant and owner of Sharp Processes. Zoe works closely with business owners and senior leaders to ensure their businesses and employees are working efficiently and effectively. She's passionate about the financial benefits, increased productivity, and innovation that engaged employees have on their company or organization. She combines her 20 years of corporate leadership experience with diversity and inclusion strategies and workflow process implementation to improve employee engagement. She's an active member of the Milton Chamber. She comes out to our young professionals meetups as well as our business after hours. Without further delay, it is my pleasure to welcome Zoe as she addresses the new normal and how businesses can adapt.
Thank you, Sam. Good morning, everyone. For those who don't know me, I am Zoe. That's the face you're looking at. This morning will be fairly detailed, so please take notes and be prepared to reflect on your own companies as we kind of go through the journey of what remote work should look like versus what it's looking like right now. And I'm going to share myself for a few minutes, and then I'm going to turn my camera off as I'm presenting because I do personally find it distracting. Just a bit about me you've heard already from Sam. So I have worked probably the last 10 years remotely, personally, and also having team members and working with partners across the globe as far away as Japan. So coordinating and working remotely is something that I'm fairly comfortable doing and I actually enjoy doing. So I'm excited to share a lot of tips with you this morning. I just want to take a moment so that I can understand the audience a little bit better and do a quick poll. So I would love if you can just click on the answers and I will share the results afterwards. So the first question, if you can fill out the poll, is are you currently working from home in response to the COVID pandemic? So I myself work from home on a regular basis. So I'm wondering how many of you are actually working from home because of COVID-19? Oh wow, there's a lot of you. So you can see the results here. The majority of us are actually working from home today on the call due to the COVID-19 pandemic. Another question for you that I was interested in. Let's see. Oh. Let's see if I can get this. There we go. How many of you are actually experiencing difficulties working from home, regardless of what the difficulties are? Maybe family members, little ones running across the room, sharing office spaces with a significant other, connectivity. Are you actually struggling when you're working from home? And I'm sharing the results for that one. It's quite a split audience, but not really surprising. One last question, which will help me. For those of you that actually have teams, how many of you have team members that are currently struggling and having difficulties working from home. So some of you might not be sure, maybe they haven't told you. Other ones, you clearly know there's challenges going on for them working from home. And of course, the NA is for those who don't have direct reports. Great, thank you for your responses. And I'm going to share these results as well, which is quite mixed again, not surprising. Awesome. Well, thank you for sharing. That does give me some kind of inclination as to what our audience looks like. So many of you might be saying, well, I've been working from home the last few weeks. Why are we talking about this? And really it is about the fact that a lot of people are in reaction mode. It's not something that we plan to do. And even if we did plan it, this is not the way we plan to do it. So the other thing to think through is leaders and employees are also showing signs of struggle. Employee engagement is negatively impacted. So one of these stats I read yesterday in a study was that 55% of employee engagement is actually decreased. Again, not very much of a surprise. A lot of the leaders and even employees are saying, I don't really know how to work from home. I don't know how to navigate and use all these different technologies and softwares and how to show up to a meeting properly. As we've been hearing on the news, everybody's expecting to have a really slow transition back to work for those that are either closed or those who are working from home. So this is something that we're going to have to rely on. And a lot of the decision making and transition planning that will be done, remote working and the successfulness of it is definitely dependent on how leaders are making decisions and how they will structure a return to work program. There is also the cost and elimination of excessive costs and the potential to save money for companies. So this is something that could be very long-term for a lot of people. And emergency planning. So like I said, a lot of people who did have emergency planning did not plan to have their entire office have to vacate the building and work remotely. So today's agenda, we're definitely going to go through an overview, strategies and framework, and review a methodology for leaders and employees, and the next 30 days, what you can do and take away and implement right away. So what is our current state versus what's ideal? Some facts on remote working that you might not have heard of. Contrary to the current situation with the COVID-19 pandemic, a lot of companies globally have increased working from home. So it's been up 140% since 2005. And actually there's 40% more companies in the US offering work from home just in the 5-year span from 2013 to 2018. And globally, 52% of workers are actually working from home once a week, which is quite shocking. 25% of the companies and work from home programs have actually lower turnover than those who do not. 80% of remote workers actually experience less job stress. 76% of employees are willing to stay with their companies when they get flexible hours, and I was actually one of them. And there's a projection to say that about 72% of all departments will have some form of remote working available. So this is something that's definitely trending and definitely changing in our what's going to be new normal. I will say and stress, the pandemic is not an actual depiction of what work from home programs are supposed to look like. So I wanted to make sure we explore what the benefits are, because they are contrary to what you might be experiencing or your colleagues are experiencing right now. People do say they are more productive, and this is all based on studies and feedback from employees who participated in work from home programs. So retention, is definitely increasing. Engagement again is up. Decreased turnover. We've all heard on the news, environmental friendliness. Reduced commuting stress. So I was one of those people that used to commute almost 2 hours one way into Toronto every single day. And so when I got to work from home, it was definitely less stressful chasing down a GO train and running for 20 minutes across Toronto, trying to get into my office. Flexible hours, and also a reduction in costs. Some of the concerns, though, that came up was the idea behind unplugging. So people feeling like, well, I'm not commuting, so I'll just work a little longer, or I wasn't watching the time because I didn't have to jump up and jump into rush hour. Oh my goodness, it's now 9 o'clock and I haven't started dinner, or I haven't eaten anything, or it's, I started at 8 o'clock and now it's 1 o'clock in the afternoon, and I usually eat around 11:30 or 12. So there is that challenge of turning yourself off after maybe your outside hours. There is feedback also about being lonely or feeling isolated. Collaboration and communication might also be a challenge with teams who are, especially if they're spread out or if they don't regularly meet and have FaceTime. Technology obviously is another one, with meeting platforms, people not understanding how to use them. Sometimes there's added cost because and places of employment don't always cover the cost of security and having internet access and so on, and working in different time zones. So like I said, for me, I was working in a job where I had to communicate with Japan, so I had to work extra late in order for them to log in early in the morning and have meetings. So we know that that's sort of the ideal state, and the ideal state from a work from home program. But the pandemic, as we know, has definitely added layers of challenges. I'm not going to speak to every one of these, but working in a reactionary mode where policies weren't put into place, procedures weren't working and they're not put into place, leaves a lot of us in a reactive mode. And even something as simple as, two people now working from home in a one bedroom, and you have one desk. Well, who gets the desk and when do you get the desk? Distractions and interruptions. Sometimes your animal loves the fact that you're home now, so wants to jump in your lap. And you've seen the bloopers of, cats running across people's laptop screens, and, kids coming running with their diapers across the screen and parents trying to scoot them away. A lot of times too, I've joined meetings where people just have poor connectivity. They don't have a connection, or their devices aren't working, so there's a lot of static, or you can't really hear what they're saying. And with all of this, each person being different, some people need that social interaction, that face-to-face, and the pandemic is not allowing a lot of people to do that. So mental health and feeling stressed and overwhelmed and not having a sense of control is burdening, and it's interfering in the way that people would normally work in a work from home situation. So what am I hearing from leaders and employees? I do hear things like, well, my productivity is down. How do I get to monitor my employees to make sure they're doing what they're supposed to be doing? How do I address remote meeting interruptions? I'm having meetings with people and I can't get people to stay focused, or there's people leaving their microphones on and having side conversations. Like, how do I manage that? As an employee, someone who's not working from home yet and wants to work from home, well, how do I have that conversation with my boss? How do I handle an employee that's actually struggling? So sometimes people are saying, well, I know that somebody's struggling. They're not saying it, but like, what do I do? How do I approach that? How do I make sure that if I have team members who are working remotely and working in the office, how do I make sure that there's equality and there's equitably treatment when I'm monitoring or when I'm leading this type of team? Some people have new employees. So I've heard of an employee, for example, being onboarded, and it was just a phone call because the person couldn't get their screen time working, and they're thinking, well, how on earth do I train someone who's new to the team? Another question I'm hearing a lot is, so I've started my transition and I now want to move everybody from home or have everybody work from home, but how do I do that? And I do want to continue. I see a question and it looks like it's been answered already. Okay, great. If there are questions, remember the Q&A window is there and it's open, so I will be peeking in as I present. So the next section I wanted to go through was, working from home and planning and people and strategies, and how is this all supposed to work together? So when we have work from home programs, an ideal situation is that you would make sure there's a framework and principles in place. So a lot of people might say, well, I heard there's a work from home program. Hey, I want to work from home. But you want to be a little bit more selective, and you want to definitely have a framework around what it means for you and your company to have someone work remotely. So starting with approval by the director or your leader or whoever it is you're reporting to, you want to make sure there's approvals in place, and making sure that people understand it's not a voluntary basis, it's an actual process. And right now we're in COVID-19, but when we come out of this, this isn't something that any and everybody is open to doing. There should be some rigor behind who gets selected. Also making sure that people understand remote working doesn't mean you have your own policies and procedures based on what works for you at home. You still have to stay with company protocols, and making sure that all employees, regardless of their location, is actually adhering to them. Again, not like COVID-19 pandemic situation, work from home is not a replacement for dependent care. It's just another location of working. Again, you got to make sure you have secure high-speed internet access, so that way that you can work effectively and consistently. Making sure that policies, especially knowing that someone is working remotely, that they are handling the documents for your company with the highest amount of confidentiality, and privacy. Leader and employee job accountabilities don't change without some kind of alignment. So I've seen leaders where they forget that they have people, which might sound odd to some people, but they actually forget that they have people working from home. So sort of that out of sight, out of mind. And we want to make sure that employees and leaders remember that just because someone's working remotely doesn't mean you necessarily treat them differently because of where they're working. And when someone is working remotely, whatever the agreed upon hours are, you have to be accessible not only by your manager, but by your coworkers and your cross-functional teams. And this one is very interesting because a lot of people think, well, as long as I'm connected, I can just drag my laptop around and be wherever I want to be. But your company should really outline, remote working was meant to be for you to work from home, not for you to work from your neighbor's backyard during a barbecue or what have you during core work hours. It should be a consistent place and a dedicated place. So I'm not going to go through this entire list, but your program should also make sure that you have specific and detailed considerations. So I've highlighted what usually is not as rigorously done, and so you hear a lot of feedback after it's been implemented. And a lot of them come around communication. So employees going home and then realizing, oh, well, I wasn't given that direction, or someone forgot to include me on a meeting invite, or the meeting was held in a room in the office and there wasn't a phone, so they didn't call me, no one called me into the meeting. Making sure someone has the proper hardware and software. So for myself, as an example, I had remote team members, and they were given basically laptops, but needed desktops because of the power of the systems and the amount of data they were handling. A laptop couldn't actually let them do their work, and I had to turn around and ask IT to send them a desktop as per the original request. So also making sure that you provide access to documents, so benefits, employee directories, drives, because a lot of times you will hear employees calling someone in the office and saying, hey, can you send me the file XYZ because I don't have access to it? Or what's so-and-so's phone number because I can't seem to access the directory? And again, making sure that if there's hardware or software updates, that your remote workers should definitely be on your department timing, not on a subsequent list timing. So another example for me was we were all getting new laptops, and I had some of my managers working remotely, and IT put them on a sort of a phase 2 list of updates on their laptops, except it was 2 months after all of the head office teams were getting their laptops updated. So that obviously caused a problem for my team. And here's just an idea of what a checklist and things that you can do to help yourself get ready. So you want to make sure that there's a task set out very clearly, who's the owners, who's going to contribute to the task, and who's the audience that gets the access to whatever it is you're working on. So the first one, updated policies. You want to make sure that not only are the employees being communicated, but that you actually post the policies so that they can see them and access them. So this is just a way to keep yourself on track and a way to plan yourself out, especially for those of you now going back and building emergency plans for the future for your company. And then adding a status code. So just like a stop sign, red means you got a lot of work to do. Yellow means you're moving, but you're not quite there yet. And green meaning everything's in place, ready to go, ready to deploy. So one thing that people forget is there's a lot of structure or hardware or software behind a program, but the people of the program are the key factors. And in that is the trust and communication. So the goal of every successful leader is to maintain high levels of employee engagement. So when your team trusts you, they're more committed to the team goal. So it improves communication and creativity. It enables people to feel comfortable and adapting and thriving in changing times. And right now in COVID, this is critical. Communication is so important that it basically your team is relying on you for information to not only do their work, but to succeed in the company. And so it's also reciprocal. So you don't want just leaders talking at their employees. You want employees also giving feedback. You know, are there things happening on the other side where a leader says to me, oh, my productivity is down 40%. I don't understand what's going on. This working from home thing doesn't work for me. But you want to make sure your employees feel like they can tell you, well, that's because when I used to walk down the hallway and ask so-and-so for a file, I used to get it in 5 minutes and now it's taking me 5 hours. So yes, my productivity is down, but it's actually just because of delays. So you want to make sure that communication between your leaders and your employees is definitely smooth and feeling like you can trust each other. I will say too, people who tend to micromanage is because they're lacking trust. They don't trust that the people are doing what they're supposed to be doing, and they don't feel like they are empowered to do what they're doing because their manager is always looking over their shoulder. So it's a two-way street, and I'm really stressing this because even if you don't have policies and procedures in place, trust and communication is which will basically take you through to the successful road. For methodology that will help to get everything together and to make sure people understand what it is that they are responsible for, I would say combining the characteristics of trust and integrity, communication, you want to make sure that you're also aware of what am I responsible for? How do I contribute to this to make sure that I'm not just working remotely, but what am I supposed to be doing? What am I accountable for? So I've created this methodology and I use it a lot in different ways, but it helps me keep top of mind, and it also helps my teams keep top of mind of what it is that their contribution is and what it is that I'm helping them with. So from an A perspective, accountability. What are they accountable for? Belonging. And this is more around being inclusive and making sure that no matter where somebody is working from, so if I'm here in Milton and my other colleague is out in Markham, it doesn't matter that the rest of the team is in the head office. We all feel like we're bringing ourselves to work. We all feel like we have a voice. And how do I as a leader to make sure that people, no matter where they are, feel like they belong on the team? Communication, again, critical, but it has to be two-way. Delivery and dedication. How do I make sure that I can consistently deliver on my workload or my responsibilities, and making sure that I'm dedicated? And this, I would say, definitely includes mental health. So this is a very busy screen. We're not going to go through everything here, but basically in each bucket, it's identifying as a leader, what do I have to remind myself of? What do I have to make sure that I've covered off to be an effective leader from somebody who's working remotely. Inclusive leadership is crucial. As far as accountability, you are accountable for making sure that regardless of where anybody is working, that they feel like they're part of the team. Making sure that you practice EQ, or EI as some people like to call it, which is emotional intelligence. And a lot of people are saying that's more important than IQ, should be practiced at all times. You know, you're frustrated and you feel like your productivity is down, but that doesn't mean you know, have a Microsoft team meeting or a Zoom meeting or a conference call and start ripping people on the call. Be self-aware and understand and slow down and catch yourself in a moment where you might be feeling overwhelmed because, you know, your in-laws are now in the house and everybody's locked up and the cat just ran across the screen and your kid knocked over the coffee. But how are you responding? How are you showing up every day in your meetings, and how are you coordinating yourself and conducting yourself? Making sure, again, that you identify what your etiquette and accountabilities are for you and your team. Making sure you show up on time to meetings and so on. As far as belonging, communication, definitely providing feedback. And I do hear from a lot of leaders that they don't normally hold one-on-ones. When you have remote teams, it's almost critical that you have some type of meeting that's regular and you get one-to-one time with your team that allows them to give you feedback and also you give them a feedback. And if it's over a call, make it over a call. If it's video, make it video, but make sure there's some kind of consistently scheduled meeting where a team member can sit and talk to you about something that might be going on with them. Making sure also that your team feels supported from a mental health practices of what are they doing, but also what are you doing for yourself? If you're sitting on an airplane and it's taking off, they remind you to put your mask on first before you can help other people. So what are you doing for yourself and for your mental health as far as leading other people? And especially right now during this challenging time, what are you doing for yourself? What are they doing for themselves? For communication, make sure it's regular. Make sure it feels like you might be over communicating sometimes, but over communicating is much better than not communicating enough. One other highlight for those of you with multiple colleagues for leadership, it is crucial that you coordinate what and how you're saying to your teams. The worst case scenario, which I've lived through unfortunately, was leaving a meeting, a leadership meeting, going back and deciding when to deploy and how to deploy my information to my team, and then having other team members just sort of blurt things out haphazardly, and another team member not telling their team until the end of their week. And it causes a lot of spin and a lot of unnecessarily stress for your teams. And right now, especially, teams do not need stress and spin, but you want to make sure that you're communicating with everyone regardless of where they are. So don't hold a team meeting and not include people who are working remotely and say to yourself, oh, I'll just let them know tomorrow when they're back in the office. Not a good idea, because people do talk and they'll go back to their office and someone will hear that they didn't get included in a meeting, and now you have a challenge on trust and reliability between you and that remote worker. So a lot of commentary here, but again, just making sure that you're taking care of yourself, but you're also taking care of your team. Be consistent, show your dedication, and definitely solicit the feedback. So one thing I did comment on for accountability is making sure that you provide guidelines to your teams. We've all seen some bloopers of people taking cameras to meetings, taking them into washrooms, people looking like they rolled out of bed and they're logging into a picture of someone whose hair is standing up on end and they're obviously in their pajamas, other people slopping down bowls of cereal. We want to make sure we provide some kind of etiquette and guidelines for people who are attending your meetings, and making sure that starting with scheduling, don't slap an hour meeting on with 15 minutes notice. People are definitely challenged right now, as we can see even from the polls on this call, on what they're dealing with inside their homes, trying to juggle it all, and then you slap a meeting on at the last minute. Please try to schedule your meetings and make sure that there's clear direction on requests, and if someone can't attend a meeting, give people some kind of flexibility and support, but make sure you're communicating what your expectations are For example, I used to have someone who would not reply to meeting invites until 15 minutes before the meeting would start. And that somebody was someone who was very disorganized. I found out afterwards through a conversation that they actually were not checking their calendar, they weren't checking their emails regularly, and therefore almost missing meetings until someone would actually send them a message and say, are you attending our meeting, or you are coming to the meeting. So those are the little things you want to look out for. Definitely,
Zoe,
yes, love.
sorry to interrupt. I just wanted to bring your attention that there are a few questions in the question box when you have a
Oh,
minute to get to them. Okay?
perfect.
Thank
Thank you.
you.
You definitely want to communicate out a agenda to keep people on track and to let people feel like they are prepared for your meetings. And again, talking about etiquette, these are some of the things that I used to use in my meetings and some of the things that I've seen work really well in meetings. So asking people to attend on time, making sure that when they get up in the morning and they're attending your meeting at 9 a.m. that they don't have their pajamas still on. Keeping microphones off for people who have children at home, just asking them to please keep your microphone off except for when you're speaking. Um, you know, no loud music in the background, one person at a time. So these are the type of things you really want to go back in and make sure that you're having conversations with your team about, um, and just being very clear. And if there is challenges, this is when you'll get to hear more about the challenges. So I'm just peeking at the questions. The first question here, do you find micromanagement is on the increase due to work from home? Absolutely. I do feel that when speaking to the leaders, I would say those who feel like they have to micromanage are those that are not communicating or having those conversations with their team. And a lot of them are people who never used to have one-on-one meetings. And so that's why I highlighted the word trust. If you show your team that you can trust them, they in return will also start to trust you as a leader, knowing that you're giving them the space, and sometimes they'll fail, but you're also communicating to them to say, I'm here to support you. What is it that's keeping you from being able to deliver what I'm asking you for? So it's a two-way street, but it does start with trust. And I would definitely say it creates a lot more work for managers when they feel like they have to micromanage. Question number 2, how can one handle challenges around meeting times, colleagues, and boundaries? For example, what was once 8 a.m. to 4 is now extending beyond these hours. A single individual with no children, perhaps working in sales, is booking a meeting in my calendar for 7 p.m. Meanwhile, I have kids, need to prepare supper, and feel like I have to help them with homework. This is not appropriate behavior, but how can I set those boundaries? I would have a phone call with them specifically and ask them for alternate times. Sometimes people are doing things that work best for them, and that's where this is where EQ comes in, or emotional intelligence comes in. At this time, it's been all over the news. People are working with children, taking care of older people in their homes. They have in-laws. Sometimes there's one desk and everybody is trying to work from the desk. And some people are working on kitchens and in cupboards and counters, trying to create space. And the fact that a colleague is putting a meeting on your calendar is probably someone who's just not aware of what you are working through. So I would definitely say have a conversation with them and let them know your situation and see if there's something that's more flexible. But if you want more, I would say open meeting, please contact me. I'm very happy to help kind of walk you through that. Okay. So I'm going to move on. So for employees, I would say the same thing is the guideline here. In essence, you want to make sure you as an employee understand what it is you're being signed up for. So in an ideal world, there might have been policies or some kind of etiquette or guidelines handed to you. Right now, even if your leader is not having one-on-one meetings or calls with you, book time with them is what I would suggest you do. Don't wait for them to book time with you because, again, a lot of leaders feel like they're spinning, they're out of control, they don't have time. Book 10 minutes and ask them to sit down and answer some of your questions and let them know what's going on with you. Um, it's a challenge right now because everybody is trying to react to what's going on, reacting to sales, reacting to um, store closures, people falling ill. And there are a lot of balls juggling, but sometimes you have to take the initiative as an employee and push yourself out of maybe your comfort zone and communicate back to them and let them know what's going on with you and what it is that you might need in order to support yourself. And that includes leaning on colleagues if you do have coworkers around you who's someone maybe you can just talk to them. So I would definitely highlight here practicing EQ. Again, we're all human, and the same scenario is going to be handled in two different ways between you or myself or anybody else. We might all have kids and spouses working in the house, and we're all having frustrating days, but just be cautious and careful on how you're showing up to your colleagues. Try to be proactive and anticipate when you might have delays and communicate that out and say, you know what, guys, I fell behind because my little one got ill this morning. I'll have that to you in another few hours. Sorry for the delay. It's okay. People are more understanding right now. And if you need that extra support and you're finding you're consistently falling behind, just have a conversation with your leader and not leave them guessing. Yes, they should be coming to you, but you know what? Everybody is dealing with this situation very differently. And there's nothing wrong with you just picking up the phone or just booking a 10-minute call with them, make it reoccurring, put it in your calendar. The other thing I did allude to earlier is making sure your mental health practices are in place. If you need to go outside for a walk, walk your block if you can. If it just means listening to, sometimes I turn on alpha relaxation music, and it's just the hum of music in the background, but it changes my mindset for just a moment. Find those habits and things that you can do if you can't get outside, that you can do for yourself to just rejuvenate yourself. Sometimes I like to sit down and have chai tea and stare at a wall. And if that's what it takes for me to just have a moment, I do, and I take it. Anything else on here that you would love to have a conversation with me? Again, feel free to contact me one-on-one. I'd be happy to support or help. So the next 30 days, and I'm just peeking at the question window. Okay, I will continue. So the next 30 days, what can you do right away that will help get you or your team in a place where you're feeling more productive? I would say a dedicated working area is definitely a start. I will share, when I started working from home, I used to work from the kitchen island. I'd sometimes go over on the couch. I would lie across my bed, and I'd be all over the house bouncing around. Having a dedicated workspace does change your mindset and prepare your mindset to say, well, in this location, and sometimes it might just be the end of your kitchen table, but in this location, it triggers your mind into saying, I'm here right now, which means I need to get things started. I mean, sometimes I used to sit out on the front porch and see everybody who was getting Amazon deliveries. It was a little bit crazy. And once I got to that one spot in the house, that's what made my mind sort of trigger itself and stay consistent. Productive habits and schedules and making sure you're disciplined is crucial. So at any given day of the week, you will see that if you lived with me, I get up in the morning and I change the same way I would as if I'm going to work. So if you were that person who started your coffee maker, took the dog for a walk, came back in and got dressed for work, try to re-implement those habits, making sure that you have some kind of schedule that makes you feel almost sane, feeling like you're back to where you usually were. And yes, there might be more distractions in your house right now, but find the ones that you can do and replicate them as much as you can. Don't walk around in your pajamas all day long. Change your clothes. Yes, be comfortable, but make a change and make it conscious and make it consistent. Same thing with discipline and structure, and I use calendar reminders constantly. I personally schedule in reminders to remind me to do things, block off work times to focus myself on specific topics, and making sure that my distractions are minimal. Again, everybody's house is different. Some people have extra people in their space right now where they can't have a door closed, they can't have no distractions. Use earphones if you can. Plug in some music and plug it into your working space. Or I use my door, so my door is shut. That indicates to my daughter, don't open the door because I'm most likely on a call or having a conversation with somebody. When the door is open, come on in, talk to me when you need to, but know that mommy is sitting here because she's working. Anything you can do to find a regular schedule or cadence is what your goal should be. And making sure that it's similar to what you used to be doing when you felt more productive. So what else can you be focusing on? Definitely for the leaders and for the employees, go back into your calendar and start scheduling one-on-one times with your team. Now is the time to check in, see where everybody is, and see if what you thought was a good working scenario for them is still a good working scenario. Things change constantly, and what was fine yesterday might not be fine today. And for employees, you definitely want to go back and communicate. Last week I told you I was feeling really good. This week I'm not so good this week. It might take me a little bit longer to get that report to you. I had problems when I was running that report. My connectivity kept dropping or something like that. It's okay to communicate these things. People are much more empathetic right now, I would say. Validate your processes is crucial. We all scrambled out of our offices, for those who weren't there in any way, shape, or form, into a world of remote working, and things that we thought we could figure out, maybe we didn't figure them out so well. It might look good from our desk and say, well, I got my report off. Yeah, but you got it off 4 hours late, which left, your colleague working until 11 o'clock at night because it was too late for them to complete their share of the work. So you just want to really make sure you're going back and communicating with people that you handed work off to, or that were waiting on you to hand something off, and make sure that what you think is working well is actually working well for everybody. Mental health practices, one of the things I've started doing 2 weeks ago is starting meetings with gratitude, starting phone calls with gratitude, or sharing things that were successful. So yesterday I was on a call, and the first thing someone asked me was, can you share one successful thing you've had happen in the last 2 weeks? And these little practices are very helpful. It seems small, but it does trigger your mind into a more positive outlook. And making sure that you are practicing trust. So trust from an employee, trust from a leadership standpoint, using things like icebreakers. For those who don't know what icebreakers are, fun little exercises. One that I like to do with my teams that a lot of them enjoyed doing were things like random questions. You pull a question out of a hat. Obviously, we're physically not together, but you can still email random questions on a Zoom call, or everybody bring a question and choose a number. Or the other one I like to use is 2 lies and a truth. Tell me 2 things that are true about yourself and mix it in with 1 lie, and the rest of the group has to guess which one is the lie and which ones are the truth. So doing little things that can help build trust and also help build some kind of rapport between you and your employees will go a long way. In the sense of beginning return to work planning, there are conversations, and I am having conversations with some leaders who want to do surveys to help them plan out who goes back to work first, help them understand what is going on in people's homes, and making sure that people are okay. I would just highly caution, yes, doing a survey, like using SurveyMonkey, it's free, it's anonymous, it's great, but just being careful that people's personal information about what their needs aren't being captured into surveys, and to make sure that it's high level. And for those of you who have not started yet, to start to begin thinking about your remote your return to work planning, sorry, and how remote working will help. So in summary, remember right now is not a true reflection of remote working. And there are pros and cons, just like everything else, but to be there to support not only your team, but yourself, and to ensure that you do have some kind of plans, processes, and communicate the etiquette that you expect from people when they are working remotely. Leaders need to be trustworthy of their teams, as employees need to provide trust to their leaders, and making sure that communication is constant and clear, and that it's also appropriate. Employees and leaders each do have responsibilities, so refer to the A to D methodology to help remind yourself of what should I be doing, what should I be considering, and that way everybody is contributing to the success of the program. You can see from the statistics, remote working is only increasing. I guarantee you coming out of this pandemic, there will be a lot more people working from home because companies who would never consider before, including government agencies, will definitely start considering it. So making sure you structure your habits, your schedules, use your calendars. Sounds old school, but I do still use Outlook. For those who still do, I do. And use any other tricks that you have that keeps some kind of structure and sanity while we're all on some kind of lockdown. Get started. So thank you everyone for your time and spending time with me this morning. I am here for any questions that you have or any conversations you want to have with me offline. I'm happy to do so. Are there any other questions? I don't see any more. Nope. Feel free to type in the chat box if you do have any questions, or you can contact me separately, zoe@sharpprocesses.com. Let's see. How can one handle challenges around meeting times between colleagues and boundaries? I think I answered that one. It looks like I've answered all of them. Thank you, everyone.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much, Zoe, for your detailed explanation of how we can survive through from work at home. I know that I've had some challenges and you addressed some of those, so thank you so much for that information. And as Zoe mentioned, if you do have any other questions, please feel free to type it in our Q&A. She also has her information on the screen, zoe@sharpprocesses.com. Please feel free to shoot her out an email, and she's happy to help and support. Thank you, Zoe, for joining us today, sharing your expertise, and we look forward to seeing you hopefully at either our next live meeting. Hopefully that will come soon, and if not, we have up and coming virtual meetings for our BHs and our MYPs. All right, everybody, enjoy your day today. Take care and continue looking over at the miltonchamber.ca website for any upcoming info sessions that we have, our social meetups as well. And don't forget, we have the portal as well for sharing for PPE and our restaurant listing as well. All right, enjoy your day, everybody.
Stay healthy, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you.